and welcome back to the Bristol Ensemble Preludes Music Education Programme at home. Hope you are all doing really well and that the homeschooling is going strong. If however you are struggling a little bit, don't worry, but this video is for you. Today we're going to be following on from our previous video on musical rhythms and looking at instruments in the percussion family, learning some really important words that go with these instruments and also having a go at composing our own multi-percussion piece. So first of all, we're going to talk a little bit about instruments in the percussion family. Now these are instruments that can either be struck with a hand, a mallet or a beater, or they can also be shaken to produce their sound. So we're going to have a little look at a couple I've got here. First of all, I'm sure you all know this one. This is a triangle. Next up, we've got this one, which is called a two-tone cowbell. Now we'll come on to a little bit later why this is called a two-tone cowbell. Then we've got this rather colourful one. This is an African drum. Traditionally in Africa, this is called a Gembe. And then finally, some of you may know this one as shakers. But the proper musical word for this instrument is called maracas. So just on listening to those four different percussion instruments, you may have noticed that even though I was playing exactly the same rhythm on all four instruments, some of the instruments made more of a sound and some of the instruments made more of a tune. Now this is because instruments in the percussion family are usually divided into two main groups. The first is called tuned percussion and the second is called untuned percussion. So if we come back to our first instrument, our triangle, if I was to strike this with my beater here, you would hear that makes quite a high-pitched, twinkly sound. But because that makes a sound, we would say that our triangle would fall into our untuned percussion group. Our maracas are also part of the untuned percussion group because we can only make one sound on them. But if we come back to our cowbell, this is an instrument that falls in our tuned percussion group because we have got the option of two different notes, one being a lower pitched and one being a higher pitched. That is why this instrument is called the two-tone name. Now sometimes in the percussion family there are instruments that can fall both into the untuned and tuned percussion groups. So I'd like you to have a little listen. I'm going to play this djembe and I'd like you to have a little think as to why the djembe might fall into both groups. So if some of you were thinking there that you could hear two different notes played at two completely different pitches, you are absolutely right. But at the same time, if some of you were thinking, well, this is just one drum, playing two different sounds, but not necessarily different notes, you are also absolutely right. And this is because the djembe is an instrument that kind of sits in the middle between both groups. And that's absolutely fine because we know that there are some instruments that do that. It's really important to know as well, if you have got a djembe or a drum that is similar, that the different pitches and notes can be achieved by using our different parts of our hand as well as the different areas on the drum. So for example, if we wanted to aim for that slightly lower pitch note, we would need to use the palm of our hand onto the main face of the drum. If we wanted to go for that higher pitch note, it is best to use our fingertips playing on the edge of the drum. Another really important musical word that we're going to learn is something that happens really often when we're playing percussion instruments. We hear it a lot. So this time I'm going to ask you to listen really carefully again to this djembe, but this time I'd really like you to pay attention to the rhythm. Are we ready? Now you might have heard there that the rhythms were being passed between the higher pitch on the djembe and the lower pitch, almost as if they were copying each other. Now when this happens in music, this is called a call and response. Now this is because, as we said, the different sounds were almost copying each other's rhythms. So a call and response can happen on almost any instrument that can produce more than one sound, but it also works really well if you have got a group of instruments, because some of the players would be doing the calling and some of them would also be doing the responding. So the next two musical words we're going to learn, which are really going to help us for when we come to play our own percussion instruments a little bit later on, describe what happens when we have more than one instrument in the percussion family playing at the same time. So for the moment, have a little listen to what I'm about to play, and I'd like you to think about the percussion instruments that are playing in this. If you thought it was the djembe and the piano, then you are spot on. Well done. And well done as well to those of you who know that the piano is an instrument that can be found in the tuned percussion family. So the music there that we heard by the piano was the tune, and we call this the solo line. This solo line can be played on its own, but when we add the djembe into the music as well, this just makes the music that little bit more interesting. So we've got the piano's solo line, and the line of music that the djembe was playing was called the accompaniment, because the djembe is accompanying the piano. So now it's your turn. We're going to be composing our own multi-percussion piece, and try and see if you can include your own call and response, solo and accompaniment line. Now, before we start, if you haven't got any of the instruments that I have been playing in this video, it really doesn't matter. You can use what you've got available in your house lying around. So for example, a simple spoon and fork can match up to that really high twinkly sound of our triangle. And if you haven't got any maracas, you can fill up an empty jar or a water bottle with rice or beans or something like that. Give that a good shake. Sounds almost the same really. Next, for the two-tone cowbell, if you haven't got that, a really good alternative is two different saucepans. You will see that they are slightly different in size, which means that they will make two different pitched notes. And finally, if you haven't got a djembe drum, or any drum really, a tabletop surface will do. Any other pots and pans that you've got, or any ice cream tubs, something like that would be absolutely fine. We're going to start with our accompaniment line. Now in percussion, usually our accompaniment line follows the same or the similar rhythm throughout the whole piece of the music. So it's really important that this rhythm is steady throughout, and usually it is played on an instrument in the untuned percussion family. If you are a little bit stuck for rhythmic ideas, have a little look at our rhythm cards following the link below this video. Personally, I think a really good start for an accompaniment line is the simple tea, coffee, tea line. Sounds a little bit like this. And so on. You can of course choose any rhythm you like really, and this rhythm can be played on either one instrument or shared between more than one instrument. We're now going to layer on top of our accompaniment our solo line, which would usually be played by an instrument in the tuned percussion group. For example, our two-tone cowbell that we saw, our two saucepans. If you've got a piano, you can use the piano, or if you play a particular instrument yourself, this is where you can use it for your all-important solo line. So like the accompaniment, our solo line can be played on one instrument, but if you want to include, make sure you're including that all-important call and response, the best way to do this would be to include two instruments in your solo line, really making sure that each instrument is passing between each other and copying each other's rhythms. If you can find any other items in your house that can turn into a tuned percussion instrument, then do let me know, because I'm sure there are many out there. But otherwise, that's it. Super easy, and you've just created your own multi-layered percussion piece. I would really love to hear which instruments you've decided to choose in your own piece. So if you are feeling particularly brave, do send in your own masterpieces and we would absolutely love to hear them. Otherwise, thank you very much for all tuning in again today to the Bristol Ensemble Preludes at Home. We hope you really enjoyed this percussion video. I certainly have done filming it. So keep that music going, keep that homeschooling going, and make sure to take really good care of yourselves. Thanks very much. Bye bye.